A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to listen to Jesus. But the Pharisees and scribes began to complain, saying, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." So to them he addressed this parable. What man among you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, would not leave the 99 in the desert and go after the lost one until he finds it? And when he does find it, he sets it on his shoulders with great joy. And upon his arrival home, he calls together his friends and neighbors and says to them, "Rejoice with me, because I have found my lost sheep." I tell you, in just the same way, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who have no need of repentance. Or what woman, having 10 coins and losing one, would not light a lamp and sweep the house, searching carefully until she finds it? And when she does find it, she calls together her friends and neighbors and says to them, "Rejoice with me, because I have found the coin that I lost." In just the same way, I tell you, there will be rejoicing among the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Then he said, "A man had 2 sons, and the younger son said to the father, 'Father, give me the share of your estate that should come to me.' So the father divided the property between them. After a few days, the younger son collected all his belongings and set off to a distant country, where he squandered his inheritance on a life of dissipation. When he had freely spent everything, a severe famine struck that country, and he found himself in dire need. So he hired himself out to one of the local citizens, and sent him to his farm to tend the swine. And he longed to eat his fill of the pods on which the swine fed, but nobody gave him any. Coming to his senses, he thought, "How many of my father's hired workers have more than enough food to eat? But here am I, dying from hunger. I shall get up and go to my father, and I shall say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son. Treat me as you would treat one of your hired workers.' So he got up and went back to his father. While he was still a long way off, his father caught sight of him and was filled with compassion. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I no longer deserve to be called your son.' But the father ordered his servants, 'Quickly bring the finest robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Take the fattened calf and slaughter it. Then let us celebrate with a feast, because this son of mine was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found.' And the celebration began. Now the older son had been out in the field, and on his way back, as he neared the house, he heard the sound of music and dancing. He called one of the servants and asked him what this might mean. The servant said to him, 'Your brother has returned, and your father has slaughtered the fattened calf, because he has him back safe and sound.' He became angry, and when he refused to enter the house, his father came out and pleaded with him. He said to his father in reply, 'Look, all these years I served you, and not once did I disobey your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat to feast on with my friends. But when your son returns, who swallowed up your property with prostitutes, for him you slaughtered the fattened calf.' He said to him, 'My son, you are here with me always. Everything I have is yours. But now we must celebrate and rejoice, because your brother was dead and has come to life again. He was lost and has been found.'" The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. This weekend, this 24th Sunday in Ordinary Time, and in Cycle C of our reading cycle, we have a very common, familiar theme in the midst of all of our readings and our responsorial psalm, and that pertains to forgiveness. This seeking out the lost, this returning with a contrite heart, coming to our senses, coming back to the Lord going out searching for us. And in the end, it's all one big happy party with much rejoicing and feasting because we've turned back to the Lord. And that's what the importance of forgiveness brings about for each one of us day in and day out, is that we are called to forgive, but also we have to recognize that we are also in need of forgiveness. That's what we can really reflect on this weekend, is our own human weakness, which leads us to sin. It didn't take very long for our first parents to sin, for sin to enter into the world, and it became part of our fallen human nature. So it's easy, in a sense, to sin. But what's also easy, and thanks be to God, it's also easy for us to receive this forgiveness, this mercy, this love, and this reconciliation with God, our Father, and with one another, with the greater community. And that's what leads us to this rejoicing, this time of feasting and celebrating. And come rejoice with me. This one sheep was lost and has been found. This son of mine was lost and has been found. That's what the Lord is able to say in heaven every time that we turn back to Him in the sacrament of reconciliation. Every time that we seek His forgiveness with a sincere heart, He recognizes that we still long to be with Him, that we long to have that intimate union and friendship with the Lord, but unfortunately is severed, is injured, and is sometimes lost through sin. But it can always be mended. It can always be brought to wholeness again. Because as we see, especially in our gospel reading today, in these 3 parables Jesus presents about something being lost, a lost sheep, a lost coin, and a lost son, in that all too familiar parable of the prodigal son. But what we see in the first 2 parables, and again in the prodigal sons, is that someone is going out in search of what is lost. These objects, these animals that have no way of returning on their own. So the good shepherd, so the woman looking for the coin, goes in search of just one stinking coin. Just 1% of the sheep. But it's still enough to go and search. They're worth, that coin, that sheep, is worth so much that the person entrusted to their care is going out in search of that lost coin and lost sheep until he or she finds it. And then again, in the parable of the prodigal son, an interesting component of the story that we might miss, especially when we hear this parable so often, for most of us is probably the most common, most familiar parable we know. But what's interesting is this, is that the father notices the prodigal son from a distance. And what does that ultimately mean? Is that father had to have been outside, looking in that direction, and the way that the son went, quite frequently. Just looking over the horizon, hoping, sometimes beyond hope, that his son would return. So the father wasn't just completely secluded, and he didn't give up all hope. And he didn't just say, oh, my son's gone. He made this decision, he's never going to come back again. But just like the man in search of a lost sheep, just like the woman in search of a lost coin, this man is ultimately in search of his lost son because he's willing to go stand on the outskirts of the property and just look for probably hours on end every day, looking for his son. And then it just so happens that when the son is coming home, that's one of the times when the father is keeping watch looking for the Son, hoping that he'll return. And of course, a big other component about the same situation in the story is that the Son came to his senses, realized what he did was wrong, realized the need for reconciliation and forgiveness, and he decides to go home. He decides to go to his Father. And that's how it works for us in our life of faith. That's how it works for us in this constant battle between sin and forgiveness, this battle between division and reconciliation with God. God is always waiting for our return. He's always looking out for us. He's keeping watch. He's keeping vigil. He's hoping, sometimes beyond all hope, that we will come to our senses, turn our lives around, and come back to him with our whole heart, our whole mind, our whole soul, and our whole strength. And when we do, we see how the stories end. Let's throw this great feast. Let's enjoy. Let's celebrate. Because what was lost has been found. What has been severed has been mended. And what has been lost through disobedience has been restored through forgiveness and mercy and love. That's ultimately the message of this tri-food parable in today's gospel reading. Jesus gives us a lot, and he gives it an answer to this interesting question that they're posing. Again, the Pharisees, the scribes, are trying to trap Jesus, and here he is eating with the worst members of society. He's eating with sinners. That's what they're calling him out for in today's gospel. But we know that Jesus spent time with not only just sinners, but sometimes prostitutes and tax collectors, these people that nobody liked, the dregs of society. Jesus was willing to dine with them and to spend time with them. And just look even at Jesus' apostles, his chosen band, his closest companions, among them too, saints and sinners. To different degrees, different backgrounds, different walks of life. And so they're questioning, Lord, why are you spending time with these people? Why even give them the time of day? And my brothers and sisters, how easily, honestly think about this, how easily could those scribes and Pharisees say that about us, to the Lord? Lord, why are you spending time with this person? Why are you willing to take a chance on these people? On him, on her, on me, on you? Could that case honestly be brought against you? Lord, why in a sense are you wasting your time? Why are you giving them the time of day? Because if we really examine our lives, there might be some truth to that sometimes. Especially if we think about the sins that we commit, myself included. There are times when it almost seems shocking but the Lord would still care for us and love us. But we know that he loves us and cares for us unconditionally. It knows no limits, it knows no bounds. And that's what Jesus is trying to say through these parables is, no matter who these people are, they're still my sheep. They're still my valuable treasure, my coins. They're still my sons. They're still my daughters. And even if they go astray, even if they get lost, even if just one of them is lost, I'll drop everything and go in search of that one lost person, son, daughter, friend, companion of mine. I won't rest until I find him or her and bring her back into the fold. And then we'll rejoice, because what was lost has been found. And what we have severed through sinning has been mended by forgiveness and reconciliation. The best way that we can achieve this reconciliation is through the sacrament of reconciliation, and there's wonderful graces that flow from that, where the Lord doesn't even remember how it was that we strayed, how we got lost, or what we did. And he even proved that to St. Margaret Mary Alacoque. There's a wonderful story where a priest was doubting if she'd actually have been having visions of the Lord, and so he told her, well, ask the Lord, what I confessed my last confession. And so St. Margaret Mary had another vision of the Lord, and an encounter and revelation with the Lord, a religious experience, and she asked him that question, and the Lord said, I simply can't remember. That was enough proof for that priest, for St. Margaret Mary, and hopefully for all of us. So we shouldn't have any trepidation, we shouldn't have any fear, but we should have a great understanding, a great respect, and a great awe that the Lord cares for us so much. He's willing to drop everything and come and search for us, just watching, waiting for us to return. And then we come back, we come to our senses, we become reconciled with God, with others, with the church. And it's all one big happy feast, great celebration. Come, share your Master's joy. You were dead and have been brought to life. You had sinned, but now we have been reconciled. You were lost and have been found.